We're live, pal, on what day is this? Thursday. Andrew Zarian here with me. Andrew, does it feel weird? You do Mat Men later in the week, and I do Fight Game podcast later in the week. But you and I are usually early in the week. We actually get to talk about stuff that happened on Dynamite for once.
Yeah, this is the first time we've ever been able to do it late like this. I'm in an undisclosed location, as you guys could see. This is a very secret location I'm in. Nobody can know.
Swanky background.
This is my mobile setup. It's not that bad. I think the video, my internet's a little wacky, but I think the video looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm excited to do this with you because we've never reviewed Dynamite the day after. There's so much to talk about from All In and All Out this Sunday, and Payback is Saturday. It's just nutty, crazy, a lot of wrestling.
I love the blue tint to your background. It makes it look mysterious. It makes it look like you got a little bit of that, like that star lighting. So hopefully the internet connection holds up. But let's start.
That's a different club. That's a different club. Star lighting is a totally different club. All right.
Let's start with the topic du jour. And it's always the topic du jour. CM Punk at All In at Wembley, their biggest show of the year. He and Jack Perry had to dust up, and we're still getting a lot of information, which is why I can't wait for the Observer to come out, because Dave will sort of lay it out in detail in one long story rather than how we're seeing it now, which is like piece of it here, piece of it there. And there's that's not the show that you want to have necessarily. Some frustration, some violence going on. And I could imagine Tony Khan was really bummed out because that show and the business they did on that show, it should only be celebrated. But what is your take here on the latest of CM Punk having an issue with another wrestler?
Well, it seems like he started his day off terribly. I was messaged by somebody that was at the airport, and they wrote, "Hey, CM Punk is flipping out." And I was like, okay, you get those every now and then, right? Like someone's at the airport and they see something. And then I started getting like photos of, him upset. And apparently he tried to contact for his ride and he couldn't get in touch with anybody. And there was a communication issue. He ended up taking the train. What do they call it over there? It's not the train. It's not the subway. The Metro? Or is that DC? I don't know. What do they call that transit system? The tube. The underground. So he ended up to train, and I'm like, he's the world champion. He has his luggage. He's walking around with everything on public transportation. So he didn't start his day off right. And then he got into it with Jack Perry, which is so stupid, right? Like, if you really think about this stuff, like, what is happening here? Why are we fighting? Why are we getting suspended for everything? The investigation, obviously, that's happening from AEW, and they should have an investigation. But you're hearing the rumors and the story, and I wonder how much of this was actually as heated as it's being described, because we saw what happened with the Miro situation where it wasn't a serious argument or anything. It was just them patting around, right?
But Brian still stands by his story, by the way. I saw he made
does
tweet.
he?
Yeah, he still stands by that. The information that he got was that he thought was the right information. So unless he's recently pulled back, but I saw he tweeted it out that he said that he stands by it.
Listen, there are problems there, right? There's no denying it. And this is not a CM Punk conversation. It's not only Punk. There's other issues. I've heard from other talent that are not so thrilled, and I'm sure you have as well. There was a lot of people that were upset at All In. I think a lot of I'm talking about the fans, right? They wanted these mega matches, these fantasy matches. They didn't get it. I thought the card was fantastic. I love that pay-per-view. It was definitely something to applaud and to celebrate. It was just a great watch for me, right? I had no issues with the card. Yeah, it could have been more stacked, sure, but Danielson wasn't available. Other people weren't available. Politics come into play. But this card for All Out is, I don't know what it is. I came up with the excuse that a lot of the matches that people wanted to see, we're not going to see because maybe it's a setup show for All Out, and they're going to have these great matches at All Out. And it turned out that that wasn't the case, because some of these matches that we're getting was not affected by any kind of politics or injuries. It's just they're just weird matches for a big time pay-per-view.
Yeah, the All In, like I said, going into All In, we had our thoughts about what was going to happen, and it turned out that that main event at All In was very much a storyline match. I know a lot of people who liked the match. I thought it was way too goofy for a title match, but then again, I had just
Which one? You broke up.
The All In main event
Okay,
as a title match. I just thought it was a little too goofy. But again, I'm a little biased because I was just watching a bunch of Terry Funk and Ric Flair stuff, and you talk about like the opposite. Like one is like super and overly serious, and one is like not serious at all. So, but like I said, everything about that show, and I know Dave he didn't actually report. He said that the numbers look like it's probably going to be their top pay-per-view of the year, and it could be their top pay-per-view of all time as far as buys are concerned. And he said he's going to have more information later today. But everything about that is a huge success, except the CM Punk thing, because the reason why this show and All Out, the reason why you kind of create a bridge is you do things at All In that could set up things at All Out. So you kind of have these two climaxing shows. And what happened is now we don't have CM Punk on All Out, and other things. It looks like some people are ill. I don't know if I agree necessarily with some of the creative that Tony's doing for All Out, but it doesn't feel like two climaxes. What it feels is like we had one climax of a show at All In, and it feels like we have a second Dynamite this week that we just have to pay for, which is a little unfortunate because I don't like the fact that he should be able to get some momentum off of All In, and it looks like the momentum just dead stopped based on what happened, and then with All Out show. But we'll have to see what All Out is. We'll have to see how the show does. I imagine he's probably got something up his sleeve because on paper, it is not a great show. It's not one that is an easy buy. Like it's not one that people are just going to go, "Yep, I don't even care what the price is. I'm buying." He's testing his fans, and we'll see what happens. I'm intrigued to see kind of the business of this show as well and how it sets up Wrestle Dream, which is another thing that came out of Wembley, like this new show in Seattle that is before the November show. So there's lots of stuff, lots of moving pieces for them. Business has to be at least pretty good, or at least he believes that they're going to be able to create some momentum off of All In. But then they're going head to head with the NFL, man, which is what he said originally he didn't want to do, but they kind of have to do it.
Yeah, he's in a strange situation that you don't want a promoter to be in, right? You have one guy that is your big time name for an entire generation of wrestling fans. CM Punk resonates, and it resonates with non-wrestling fans or fans from that are in key positions in key companies right now. Advertisers, advertisers, ad agencies, your sales team, Warner in general. Every time I speak to someone over at WD, they love that they have CM Punk on that show. They understand the importance of that, and I think maybe that comes into play with Tony's decision making. I also, this happens in WWE also. I think a lot of people are mistaken when this stuff is happening in AEW, hearing that there was backstage issues. There is no, I'd say the only difference is, and I'll be 100% transparent here, I think more people stooge off in AEW than WWE when it comes to the backstage stuff. I don't love that stuff. It's not what I cover, right? I like to cover the business of it and the fun aspect of it. And at one point, you have to decide, are we going to come up with a program, or not a wrestling program, but a program in the corporate side where we could alleviate these issues, right? We have a structure put in place where these things do not happen as much, or we just sweep it under the rug like other companies do. I don't know what the answer is, because if you start becoming very overly reactionary to things before an investigation is done, it's going to start affecting your TV, and here's a great example of that. So, to Tony, I mean, I applaud him if doing the right thing is what he's doing here, that he needs to suspend these people because of their actions, but there's also another side that you're giving up the business side of this because of what happened. So either you have to make a total pivot away from CM Punk at this point, or you're going to have to stop reacting this way. You can't do these suspensions every major pay-per-view. And then what? Wait for an injury and then he's out again? I'm not being critical of Tony. I think it's a terrible position he's in that he has to make this decision. But what is the right decision? The reality is Tony needs another huge name on that roster, especially for Collision. And there's not too many names that are going to be available that he could get or would want to go over. So who are you left with? You know, that Edge rumor is really interesting now, right? Yeah, well, there you go. So if you are going to cut ties with Punk, or you're going to say, listen, this guy can't be a guy for us. Maybe he's a special attraction. Once every quarter he comes in, does something huge for us, does a program, and he leaves. Maybe that's the answer here. And maybe it's the healthy thing. But you still need a guy. And maybe Edge is the guy. You know, you throw him a tremendous amount of money and you build a program around him on Collision, and he becomes that, that key name that, your network partner recognizes, considering you have 2024 coming up for your contract year.
Yeah. Okay, so you work for a company, I work for a company, and our companies are not professional wrestling, and I'm not trying to say
Listen,
that.
man, my company, my business is very close to it. I deal with a bunch of independent contractors that are crazy. So
okay, but do you have the infrastructure built to make sure that things don't go out of control like that? Because I think that's really what the issue is. Or there's not one single issue. There's a bunch of things. But if you had, they grew really fast. They employ so many wrestlers. They only have certain hours of TV. You hear about the frustration, like you said. We heard policies, and they were supposedly trying to sharpen these policies. You can't go to social media about X, Y, and Z, but but still, information is going to get out everywhere in every single business, sports, entertainment. That's how stories are written, is just people talking. I think the thing is that I'm actually really interested in that, and if I was asking Tony, there's a line, and he loved the idea that some of this stuff, like some of the real life stuff, was kind of happening and would sort of bleed into the matches, into the storylines. Because he told Dave and I this last year, like the night before All Out. Dave compared it to Brett and Sean, and Tony's answer was along the lines of, like, he thinks that creates interest. So he was leaning into that. And I kind of wonder if he feels the same way a year later with everything that has happened, because the internet, Twitter, is a vehicle for AEW storylines. If you think about it, every time Sean Ross Sapp writes something about Punk, it is publicity for AEW. Is it the right publicity? Well, in wrestling, I almost feel like it is. But I wonder if he would feel the same way about, leaning into this stuff versus trying to stop it, because maybe this is the first time that he's done so. And I do wonder if it was kind of the last straw for some folks that and then he decided that he just had to do it. He had to step in and take an action.
I mean, if that's the case, and he's comfortable leaning in, which I get it. The reality-based stuff does work. People, the shoot stuff that we saw in late 99, 2000, it was intriguing to a portion of the audience. I think more now because wrestling has changed and everybody's reading wrestling news now that watch, especially AEW, right? Those guys are, it's like the NFL. Most people are committed to reading about the latest stuff. If you lean into the reality aspect and the problems off camera, then you're going to have to do something other than suspend everybody every time there's a conflict, because conflict will happen. So you either shut that off and you say, no, you stick to the script and this is what we're doing, and you make it a point that that's the case here, or you are fine with this, and sometimes fights happen and you're just going to have to deal with it. So it's a difficult balance to have. I don't think it's listen, Tony has the hardest job, right? Really hard. And I think people just have to stop being insane. And I think that's a really hard thing to do in the professional wrestling business.
So in yesteryear, a lot of times you would have the talent and the locker room kind of policing themselves, right? And we know that caused some issues as well. That's not the end-all, be-all, perfect solution here. But I do feel like, maybe there could be more of that where if you utilize some of the talent to just be like, hey, like, let's set some rules and standards here. We're sort of on the same team. But that also doesn't seem to be the thing that they want to do. So I don't know what the answer is outside of I really wish that for the betterment of professional wrestling that CM Punk would not be so triggered and people wouldn't be trying to trigger him so easily, knowing how his frustration level gets so high so fast. Because if you're Nick Nemeth and you go, okay, I'm not gonna argue with this guy, I'm just sort of gonna talk to him, you still get screwed because Nick Nemeth still got kicked out of the building or still wasn't allowed on this show. Or you're Jungle Boy Jack Perry and he asks you and you say something smart, then there's a fight that ensues. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't with him. I do wonder, if he was to do that to somebody else, maybe who is a little bit more impressive in the physical aspect of combat, would his reaction be the same? Would he be so aggressive in his comments? Maybe a little bit of little bullying aspect of it that they could clean up.
I don't know. I mean, he went after the Bucks and Kenny. That was a bizarre. I don't know. Sometimes you wonder, like, was it as crazy as it's being described? Is it as what was the fallout of this? I just think it's totally unfortunate. He
had his
opportunity.
boy, right? He had his boy in the back, so it was kind of like, yeah, you got my back kind of thing. I think our producer, super producer, has a question here. John, what's up?
I have a question, and I was wondering, AEW's been around for a few years now. Do you think it's time that Tony has somebody that he can bring up in the ranks of his organization to fill in for him, somebody that can be a second in command? Because it seems like to me, like, Tony is the guy that runs AEW and does everything for AEW for the most part. Do you think it's time that he has somebody that's a second in command, somebody like a Triple H that WWE has? Instead of Vince McMahon, it's now Triple H, and he does the day-to-day stuff and whatnot. And I'm feeling like maybe Tony Khan needs somebody like a Triple H.
I think you're 100% right. I think that's part of the problem because the company is growing, the organization has grown exponentially, and I think he's attempting it. It's a very unique job, especially talent relations. That's if that's what we're talking about. Talent relations, you need to not only understand the business aspect of it and what your partners want, but you also have to understand what talent's needs are and be able to de-escalate situations. Jim Ross was fantastic at that job. Whether or not people like Jim Ross.
He had to play the bad guy role, though, right? He had to give the bad news, and everyone would blame him, even though he wasn't the one actually making the decision.
Yeah, so I know that he's put in key people that we know personally in certain spots, but
he's jumping up and down right now, saying me, JARRETT. He wants that job.
Yeah, well, do we? I mean, listen, I don't know Jeff. I find him so entertaining on TV, but is he the talent relations guy? Is that something that he's not? And I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to. Is he capable of that job? Is that something that he wants to do?
No, probably not. But you look at what producer John is talking about. You're looking at the history of WWE has always been about those people who supported Vince also had to be yes men, right? Look at Bruce Pritchard, who is very knowledgeable about the business. Pat Patterson, very knowledgeable about the business. But in some instances, they couldn't cross Vince if they really wanted to stay employed. So
do you think that's a bad thing for AEW? that someone could, creatively get Tony's message across, the message that he had in 2021. That was peak Tony Khan booking. In every aspect, that promotion for coming out of a pandemic was as perfect as you could have done it, with Punk's big, return back to wrestling. I mean, it was fantastic. Who could have that vision to articulate what Tony thinks? I think, Pat Patterson and Bruce Pritchard. I think Bruce was a key for Vince, for sure. Whether people like Bruce, don't like Bruce, or he understood what Vince needed and wanted. Some of that was through fear.
He still got fired like 2 times.
He still got fired multiple times, and that was his boy. I think for Tony, he needs to find people that he can trust fully. Not they're there because it's a professional wrestling business and that's where the money is for them. He needs to find someone that he could 100% trust with his message and that could control the talent when things like this happen, or prevent it from happening. It's a shame. It really bothers me, and it's gotten to the point that I honestly, on Wednesday, I was so just frustrated. A fan still. I'm a fan of wrestling. We cover this, but I still want wrestling to prosper and do great. And the same thing for WWE when these things happen. I get turned off to it. I was turned off last night. It's how many more times can we deal with this? Why is the big story CM Punk right now? Why aren't we celebrating this amazing 81,000 person show? Instead, immediately, the entire show was taken over by this.
Yeah. To go back to John's question a little bit, I think, and Tony Khan said something before All In. I think somebody asked him a question or he answered something, and what I got out of it was that if Tony Khan was hit by a bus and could not perform his duties as creative in AEW, who would be the person to replace him? He did not say CM Punk. He said Bryan Danielson. He said that he thinks that he and Danielson have some of similar ideas creatively. And now that John asked this question, what it made me think is it almost has to be a wrestler who has the respect enough of the talent to be like the conduit to Khan. But what happens is, I don't know if you as a wrestler want to be that conduit, because then the perception by the wrestlers might be that, oh, you're just Tony's boy, or you're going to get pushed because you're in this role. So I don't even know if you would want it, but it does seem like he trusts a few people. I just don't know how much he trusts them to roll out his idea. He definitely seems like what we used to call a former CEO whose hands had to be in everything. We used to call him the pixel policer, because even to the design, which is not his forte, he would still have an opinion on it and not just let people cook sometimes. So that is, I think, what I wish I knew more about the work style, because it does seem like Tony's a bit of a pixel policer, and it does take trust, and it does take stuff to happen like this for him to sit back and go, okay, we need to make some changes. We thought that there were going to be some, right? Will Washington joined the team, but I see a lot of blame going Will's way, and I'm like, guys, Will is the rookie on the team. He can't be telling the boss no on stuff. In some ways you can have a conversation, but Will's not dropping the hammer. Will's new in his job. He's new into the wrestling business, and he's finding his way. He's more going to grow in the organization than people expecting him to drop the hammer right now.
Yeah, I think the criticism on Will Washington is it obviously shows you the lack of experience in a corporate structure that people have, right? If you for the few months that Will's been in AEW, for people to even talk about him in a negative way or blame him on anything is insane to me. It takes months, if not years, of gaining influence and trust, especially in an organization like that. So, Will Washington being there has not impacted the television or the seconds are tanking or anything like that. I don't even think he's rating as much as people think, or he's inputting. I know he was there for continuity reasons, and that's great because he has a great memory. But I I think overall, everybody. Part of the issue also, Garrett, is something that we have all spoken about, right? People that are it's time for them to have some stories that draw people in the following week, right? Everybody said, well, AEW is great at making these matches, but how about the story? Well, now we have story. We're complaining that there's too much story. And I think last night was a great example of that. The whole everybody's in a friendship angle now somehow. Yeah. Everybody's friends are either you're having issues with your friends or you're finding new friends or there's a former friend in the balance of the new friendship. It's too much story, maybe. I don't know.
A lot of the conflict is very similar in how they're getting there right now. But that sometimes you kind of go with what works, and it's pretty clear that MJF and Adam Cole has worked, and we'll see where they go. They have definitely stretched it probably longer than they originally thought, and that's a good thing, right? To be able to see some patterns and go, oh, maybe there's more meat on the bone, and we can continue to tell this story. Now,
man, I got to tell you, that tag match, though, the tag match that they had was the safest wrestling match I've ever seen on a mega pay-per-view in my life.
The Aussie Open match?
Yeah. They were, so gentle with each other throughout that entire match.
Yeah. Okay, so let's fast forward to last night, and because this is still their big storyline, no MJF on the show, at least live. They did some pre-recorded stuff with him to announce that Grand Slam of all places is going to be the one where they do the title match and not at this upcoming pay-per-view. But there was more story told with the Kingdom. Now, this is not whether or not you like that promo, whatever. That's not what I'm really want to discuss. But the idea that they did not make it as if we're supposed to know this story. They did introduce the Kingdom. They did tell some backstory, Taven and Bennett and my wedding and this and that. And it made Adam Cole kind of look like a dick a little bit, but I thought that was good because on the same show, they gave us Samoa Joe and Shane Taylor and did not tell us how Shane Taylor got that match, which happened on their ROH television. So on the same show, in one match, you kind of had to do your own research to figure out why they're having it. And then on the in this other situation, they told the story of Adam Cole and MJF. So I don't know who the influences are there to make sure that one of these stories was told and then this other one didn't need to be told. But I'm happy that they took the time to do the Kingdom segment because you're not taking your audience for granted. Because I didn't watch weekly ROH TV, 15 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever it was. So I'm happy that they did. I watched Dynamite. I want things to happen on Dynamite. So I was happy with that segment.
But why is Samoa Joe wrestling Shane Taylor on that show? Why?
You want to know what my guess is? Is that they lost a match maybe, and they probably needed one.
Maybe, but I mean, listen, the Ring of Honor stuff, I understand why he bought it. Makes total sense. I don't understand where it falls in the level of importance of things. We have ROH representation on Collision and on Dynamite and Rampage. It baffles me still because I know you want to get these guys in front of TV because they will become on, they will be going to your main roster eventually, right? But it's so much, right? And they don't. And like I said, they're not explaining the stories they're seeing. There's no build up for this. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, you have Rampage. Put them all on Rampage and tell the story on Rampage, and now you have something for your other shows. Samoa Joe should be wrestling someone else with a much bigger name. And no knock at anybody. I just think that you lost CM Punk on this show. You don't want to. Why aren't you giving something really unique with Samoa Joe?
No, you're 100% right, but here's where I want to give Tony a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Weather and illnesses caused Dynamite to not be the show I'm sure that he wanted to put on to be the bridge between these two pay-per-views.
Yeah.
The Samoa Joe match, I'm going to guess, was going to be on whatever the next ROH pay-per-view is. But when CM Punk is probably not on this show, and we'll see what happens with Ricky Starks. Supposedly, there's going to be something with Ricky Steamboat. A lot of people think that may lead to Hangman Page and Ricky Starks, which I'm fine with that match. As an impromptu story, like he's kind of tangentially related to the situation, at least in the reality eyes. Like you said earlier, I do want to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, though, because you have the illnesses, you have I'm sure coming out of that giant show, whether it's COVID or I don't know exactly what the illnesses are, but and then you have the weather thing. So Kenny Omega wasn't able to be on that show. I'm sure it would have been awesome to see a go home Kenny Omega interview, because that's a big match. So yeah, the Joe thing I think is probably a replacement, and it's just an unfortunate one because, man, let's tell a little bit more about what's going on. Maybe they could have sold a few Honor Club subs if they had told us how Shane Taylor got into this match. I don't think we've seen him wrestle on Dynamite. Maybe he's done one interview on Dynamite, or maybe it was on Rampage. But, you talk about introducing a character, and Shane Taylor's got a lot of fans. Like, there's a lot of people who want to see him in AEW, and you introduce him in this funky way. So that wasn't the best way. But I want to hit one thing with you, and I wanted to see if this really resonated with you like it resonated with a lot of people. Orange Cassidy beats Penta in the main event to set up this match with Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley had beat Commander earlier in the show. And Orange Cassidy gets the mic. And he's like, I don't usually talk. And then he just cuts this great babyface promo. Fantastic. And I was like, wow, that's the Orange that I want. I don't like the Orange who's like, whatever, who cares? Not a big deal. Like, that's actually the antithesis of like hype. And he cuts this promo. This match with Moxley now all of a sudden feels like it's a pretty big deal. And did that promo resonate with you? Because my thought coming out of this, I woke up this morning and I was like, that thing could be big, because Orange Cassidy's had this belt for a long time. Jon Moxley is one of the top stars, so you go into this match assuming that Moxley's going to beat him. If this is the main event of All Out, I think you have Orange Cassidy win, and he gets his moment on, what should be a much bigger pay-per-view than it feels like. But if you still get that moment, maybe that's the good feel go home moment coming out of this show. What do you think about Cassidy and Mox?
I thought it was an odd pairing at first, and then he cut that promo, and I'm like, man, I'm invested now. He's defending that title every single week. He's on TV with the title every week. If you are going to talk about the positive right now in AEW, they've done an amazing job at, telling you that Orange is a serious competitor. He's had some big wins, and you need that, especially when you're trying to, create new stars. I think they've done a great job with him. I also think Moxley needs a little bit of time off. That guy's been going a million miles an hour for quite some time, and it shows you how dependable and needed he is in that company. I'm fine with either way, either win. If Moxley wins it, that adds a nice little level of intrigue to that title. If Cassidy wins it, I think that's a huge addition to convincing you, like, this guy could be a world champion in this company someday.
Yeah, that could be, one of these things is, I was making this comparison in my Discord, Fight Game Media Discord. There were some WWE shows, pay-per-views that would get changed because, someone gets popped for steroids and you got to change the match. Somebody gets hurt, or just haphazard. Like, there's something when WWE was doing like 12 to 14 pay-per-views a year, the booking was like haphazard sometimes. And so you go into this show with such low expectations, and the idea is like, okay, well, maybe the show is going to be better than what I thought it was going to be. Or what should happen, and this is where I think, Tony Khan has got to be thinking, I'm sure he's a creative guy. I'm sure he like embraces the idea that he's got to be, pivot on this stuff and, change these matches. Like, this is kind of, why he probably really enjoys booking is just the energy of it. But I'm thinking like he's got to know, okay, what is my hook? What are my matches? What is the moment? And I do wonder if this Orange Cassidy situation is the moment, because even though our expectations are low going into this show, and I see a lot of people who are usually very pro AEW saying this as well, the idea that you can still make a moment and over deliver, because you never want to under deliver on a pay-per-view. Over delivering and making the audience happy seems to kind of be his thing, because we've seen that with a lot of shows that maybe the build for some of the stuff hasn't been great. But I wonder if this is one of those things that he's got up his sleeve. Like, this is going to be a moment, and we're going to kind of be able to showcase this thing in a big way. And, I think he probably, even though he doesn't like the disorganization and the changing up of stuff, just creatively, he probably feels challenged, and he's probably embracing the idea that, hey, man, I got to do, my brain's got to be working, and I got to do a bunch of stuff here to come up with a show that's worthy. And so my hope is that while we're all sort of feeling that the card on paper is not great, that he sees that as, okay, how are we going to over deliver? And there's going to be some good matches. Moxley and Takeshita is probably going to be outstanding, right?
Omega Takeshita.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Omega and Takeshita.
I mean, Moxley Takeshita would be great too. I would
That'd
love
be
to
awesome
see that too. Yeah, and they've done a good job at keeping that feud fresh. I want to see that. I want to see Jay White in a singles. Now that I want to see Malachi get a big singles push. I want to see Brody King get a big singles push. They have some really great people there. They just need to move the pieces around a little bit and tell you this is must-see TV, especially if CM Punk's not there on a Saturday. I think they have some great. I think Takeshita's fantastic. I think Jay White is unbelievable. I think Juice has been the MVP for them the last couple months as far as a new talent on TV regularly. It just you got this terrible cloud looming over you with the CM Punk situation. I don't know what the answer is now. I don't. What do you think? And here's the other thing, dude. He has a title.
The real world's
title. Are you going to continue this? What are you going to do with this? What's the end result for this title? Does someone win it and unify it? Is that Max?
It's got to be MJF. Like, that's got to be what they're doing, right?
I don't know if that's going to happen.
I also secretly wonder if Punk was supposed to come out at the end of that show just to just hold up his belt and point to it or something.
I was told no.
No?
When I asked about a title for title thing, I was told not right now.
Yeah, you could lay some of the footprints down though, even if it's maybe that's going to be Double or Nothing or something.
But in a weird way, isn't that shitty for Max though? If you think about this, right? He's the world champion. He's the AEW world champion, and on every show that he's on with Punk, they tell you that CM Punk is the real world champion. And I know that some of that is obviously it's the Ric Flair thing, but with no interaction or no comments from Max about this. It kind of, I don't know. You gotta have
brother's got a best friend
looming.
for the first time in his life.
I know, and I got to tell you, I'm going to be honest. I hate it. I hate the best friend stuff. I'm not a fan of it.
This is UFC booking more so even than 1991 WWE, because what it is Punk lost his title. Well, he didn't lose it, but they had to create a champion because he was out. Or no, actually, you know what? Yeah, because he beats Moxley, and then he can't defend his title. So it's like a UFC where the guy gets injured, he's not ready for the title defense, so they slide an interim champion. And Tony had to do that without knowing when Punk was going to come back. So that it's really UFC booking more than anything else. It's like you have the claim of the champion who didn't get beat, and now you got this new guy. I think it's going to work whenever they pull the trigger on it. But you're right, it is weird that MJF doesn't even acknowledge it.
It is a 33-year anniversary, right? In November, yes, of that funeral parlor segment.
I just watched.
I'm going to fantasy book for a minute. I watch that thing every week. Okay, I take my edible, and that is the first thing I put on when everything kicks. I put on that superstar segment. Do you know? It's to the point that my wife has memorized the lines. But I'm going to lay this out. Christian comes out with a new talking segment called the Jurassic Pit. Okay, and he's hosting. He says, my first guest is CM Punk. CM Punk comes out, and you do the reverse, and here comes Max. And he says, you know how long I've been waiting for this moment, big man? And they do that whole Hogan thing.
Whole Hogan
Lean
thing.
into it. The Hogan, and then Luchasaurus rips the cross or whatever, the X off of CM Punk's, gloves or whatever the hell you're going to do with them. And now you've created this bizarre, alternate universe just for my shit and giggles. That's all I want to say. But that's the match, though. That match is the match to unify those titles.
Not only is that time frame kind of where this real world champion thing comes up, but that time frame is also where the back-to-back pay-per-views come. Survivor Series 1991. They do Hogan and Undertaker in the middle of that show. Undertaker wins the title, but there's cheating. And so then Jack Tunney, before Survivor Series goes off the air, says that they're going to do the rematch this Tuesday in Texas, which is on the take Tunney is what Bobby Heenan used to call him. And so they create, that, and so they're kind of copying that from that time frame too. And this is just a quick plug, but on my Patreon, on the Fight Game Media Patreon, me and a couple of the podcasters, we're going to go back over that time frame because I just watched all the TV for Survivor Series 91 and this Tuesday in Texas, and kind of do a little bit of comparing and contrasting to what AEW is doing right now. Because what a time. Do you know that I was probably never a bigger wrestling fan in my life than 1991, just because of the time and place where I was. But I was so dialed in that I knew all the steps to this Flair thing and this Tuesday in Texas and Survivor Series like beforehand, before it actually happened, because I was listening to this like insider wrestling show, which I assume the guy just read The Observer. But so I was so dialed in. So this is a very memorable time frame for me. So
How old were you?
I was like 14 or 15, I think.
Wow. I was a lot younger. I think I was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But it was that year is what made me fall in love with wrestling. 91, SummerSlam 91 is what made me fall in love with wrestling. And I thought it was so unbelievable because a couple months prior or a year prior, we were driving down to West Virginia, my dad and I and my mom, and stopped at like a hole in the wall, gas station. And we go in, and my dad's like, you can get a comic book if you want. And I saw a wrestling magazine, and it had Flair just bleeding everywhere. And I'm like, that's what I want. I want to read that. And inside, it had a spread on what if, and it had Hogan on one side and Flair on the other. I'm like, what if? Yeah, what if this old man fights my hero in life, Hulk Hogan? I didn't know that Flair was 41 at the time, and not 40. It's unbelievable. But that was such a pivotal time. But AEW has that right now, and it just like what happened in 91, whatever reason, it's not happening. You're not seeing that match happen.
Yeah. So. Anyway, there's also a WWE show on Saturday. This is also I'm not saying also, but not the best lineup on paper. Payback, even on television, and maybe they will hit a home run on Friday, and see if the Bloodline's going to do anything on that show. But this show, Payback, oh my gosh, this is also a souped up Monday Night Raw card so far. I don't, where are you with the Saturday, Sunday WWE AEW doubleheader here? Are you excited? Are you like, oh my gosh, I have to do so much watching for my show on Sunday? Like, where are you with all this stuff right now?
Yeah, so I obviously I have to watch Collision and this for Sunday, right? Because I got to do the show right before the pay-per-view goes on. So I got to do a pre-show. I got to a preview to the pay-per-view. I got to talk about Payback, and I got to talk about Collision. This is I get it. This is the most WWE-esque B show you could have. You have some really cool stuff. I want to see Seth Rollins and Nakamura. That's going to be a great match. I'm interested in the LA Knight Miz stuff because Miz was so convincing on Raw with that promo as LA Knight. It was to the point that I turned it on, Garrett, and I was like, oh man, they cut his hair. What did they do to LA Knight? They gave him like a new look. I'm like, oh, they changed everything around. It took me like a fraction of a second to recognize it. It is what it is. Becky Lynch, Trish Stratus, Steel Cage. Okay, fine. Nakamura, Seth Rollins. I'm into that. That'll be a fantastic match. I would have loved to see Nakamura like 5 years ago in this match and a real contender for the title.
Yes.
And then you got Kevin Owens and Sammy in Judgment Day also. And Rhea and Raquel, which will be fine. But what's the main event here? Which one stands out? Is it the world title match?
I think it's the world title match. It could be.
Or do you give it
Sammy.
to Becky and Trish?
You could. The problem with that is, what if the match isn't that good? You know, it's possible that it may not be, just because the couple times they've wrestled this year, they've kind of kept it short, right? And maybe they're saving stuff. So maybe they have like this grandiose idea that will work. And I'm a giant Trish Stratus fan, so I'm completely fine with it being in the main event. I do want to see what they're going to do with Jimmy and Jay. Jay, maybe he's still away. Maybe he shows up at Payback. Maybe Jimmy's got a singles match. Maybe Jimmy and Solo got a tag match. So I'm intrigued there. It does seem like, Roman is nowhere near this show, which hurts it in just the eyes of like
Cody.
whether or not it's important. And yeah, Cody's going to be in Grayson Waller segment. Good God.
Why? Why?
I think is that what it is?
I don't know. But why?
I thought that's what I heard it was.
Yeah, I think you're right. But why? Like I get it. Like you're telling me you don't have the bloodline there. You don't have four of your top draws there, or two of your big acts there on this pay-per-view. And by the way, the show sold out, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't even need them, which is unbelievable. I mean, I guess if you're going to a pay-per-view, you kind of expect Roman or Cody to be there, but neither are there. It'll be a fine show, Saturday night, those six matches.
It is going to be fine for a Peacock $10 a month show, right? This is not a show that anybody in their right mind would pay $60 for on pay-per-view. So just be happy that this one is on Peacock.
No, AEW took our $100 already.
Yeah, AEW is taking all our money. I did have that thought though. I think I haven't talked to Dave yet, but I think we're going over to Dave's house on Sunday to watch All Out. I did pay for All In, and I was happy to pay for All In. That was a pretty historic show, I thought it was. I thought it was a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it, but for All Out, I don't know if I would have paid for it if I wasn't doing the stuff that you and I do. Like if I was just a fan and I had no vested interest in having to watch these shows, and if I just watched it as a fan, would All Out be enough for me to pay the back-to-back $50? I'm not sure. I don't know if I would have bought All Out.
I probably would still have done it. Yeah, I most likely would have still, because I know it's going to be a fun show, and I really enjoy AEW's product. I mean, and I'm coming off critical today about it, and I'm maybe more than usual, and that's because I want to see pro wrestling prosper. I'm not rooting for one over the other. I don't root for AEW over WWE or vice versa. I want pro wrestling to prosper because it's such an important part of who I developed into. As an adult, a lot of it has impacted me in many ways. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and you're the same way. I don't root for a company. I root for the business because I genuinely enjoy it. If you like football, you like football. I would still order, but I definitely could recognize that this is the weakest All Out. I mean, if you compare this to 2 years ago, Garrett, when we were in Chicago, and I was probably the best live show I've ever been to. It's very much night and day, and these are the stories. These are the in 10 years from now, if AEW is no longer here, these are stories that we're going to hear. How the company went from one of the hottest promotions to falling from there. Again, I'm not saying that that's the case, and I'm not putting that out there. I don't wish that on them. I think they're going to be fine, but there has to be changes, and I don't think this pay-per-view is at the standard of what we expect for an All Out.
Yeah, I was on the Bleacher Report post show last night with our good buddy Ryan Drosty, and he's going to All Out. Because that he's been to, I think he's been to every single one of them, and we talked about All Out 2021 about how fantastic of a show that was. Maybe the best show that AEW's ever done, from the aspect of, just making it feel like it's such a big deal. And, he's a little bummed out because the card that he is getting, he doesn't see All Out worthy. But he's still going. He's going with friends, and I'm sure they'll have a great time. But there was some disappointment in him because he's comparing it to All Out of the past, and All Out of the past 2021 is just an amazing show. The thing that I like what you said about the business. I would actually caveat that a bit for me, not for you. For me, I do root harder for AEW because the way that the business works is that the better AEW does, the better WWE is going to do, because they.
No, I agree with you. 100%. You're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right there.
We saw that last year. AEW. Let's go back to All Out 2021. They're on fire, right? Danielson comes out, Adam Cole comes out, just these moment after moment after moment, and WWE's like, okay, we see you, and we need to raise our game. And then they bring in Cody, and you do Austin and KO. And from then on, they've been on fire, Bloodline. So I root harder for AEW because WWE is such a machine. WWE is going to be here forever unless they just decide not to be for whatever reason. AEW being better is just better for the industry because WWE is only going to be pushed as hard as they need to be pushed. And so that's why I do root for them.
No, you're absolutely right. You want wrestling to do well on all levels because it feeds into the top side too. I'm always reserved with these because I kind of have trust in Tony's vision with his TV. I let things play out a little bit, even if I don't really love it. But like Orange Cassidy, if people listen to Mat Men, I get it. I get the character, I get the gimmick, but it wasn't my petite until I was like, oh crap, I get it now, right? Yeah. And I'm able to see that with these things. The best friendship between Adam Cole and Max, I don't love, but I'm letting it play out. I want to see what happens. I thought they had a good, their match was great. I like both of them. I just. What do they have that's making people tune in every week? What is that hot angle? What is the thing that you want to see? Kenny Omega's not wrestling every week, so that's out the window. Danielson's not on TV every week, that's out the window. You have Moxley that's killing himself every week on TV. Hangman's not wrestling on TV every week. The Bucks aren't wrestling TV every week. It's a very different brand than it was 24 months ago. So what am I tuning in? Who am I tuning in for every week? You have CM Punk on one channel. Who's it? And then you have Max in the other one. But I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect. Oh.
I hear you. I think it's a good summary of your feelings about this stuff. And we have a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about Terry Funk and Bray, if you wanted to. I am rereading Terry's book. Like I said, I did some deep dives into Terry and Ric Flair, and John and I told the story of that program from 1989 NWA on last week's Fight Game podcast. So I was dialed into Terry's stuff. But the Bray thing, man, was so shocking. Well, the information that was out there is just so weird to me because his dad was saying like, oh yeah, hope he's turning the corner, and then he passes away like not that much later. And so it's just so sad. Like the guy is so young. Everybody talks about his creativity and how his brain was just built for wrestling, but yet, he did struggle with the characters at times, with the Fiend, which seemed to be like this cool new Undertaker, 2020 version. And then it just kind of deflates. He had that big comeback last year at the pay-per-view and was the talk of the town. And they really never were able to follow up with it from like this big match perspective. And then he got ill. So just, so much sadness in the end there. But I will say, you go back to those mid 2010s, the Wyatt family and the Shield, that felt like a next generation type of thing. And I thought that was maybe the best, some of the best stuff from those years was the Wyatt family and the Shield. So I have really better memories of that than I have negative memories of what followed. But still really sad, and I'm so bummed out about hearing that news and what happened.
Yeah, terrible. It was actually one of those that I was shocked hearing. Like you had, and we haven't had that in a very long time. I mean, people knew Terry's health was declining. People knew he wasn't in it was a known thing, and he lived a very full life, an eventful life. Bray is a young man with 4 kids, 4 children.
Yes.
And two young children. It really 37 years old. I'm 39, and you hear this, and it's devastating. It really, I got a call from WWE, and they told me what happened, and I couldn't put it into words. I was thinking, I'm like, oh well, I should tweet this, because somebody called me just to let me know, and they told me what the situation was and what's going on. And then I spoke to someone that's very close to the family that's in WWE, and they explained the thing, and I just couldn't articulate the words in the way. And I think Sean did a very good job with it. Sean wrote about it, and he had the story here, and I think he did a great job at Fightful. I just couldn't, and some of it had to do with the fact that I dealt with a very serious thing with my daughter the last month, and it hit me. Like I really get affected by celebrity passings, but this was a guy that I have mutual friends with, and it was terrible to hear. I was just stunned because the story was that he was getting ready to come back, and his dad had said he was doing great. And then, a piece of the story that didn't initially come out at first, but apparently he was hospitalized a week prior.
Yeah.
And, just terrible. What a terrible end to this amazingly creative and talented human being. It's so scary, right? Because he's younger than me, and that happens. And he has 2 young children, and he has I don't know if him and JoJo were married or not, but he has a partner. It
looks like maybe fiance is
fiance,
the term that I saw a lot.
And he was a pivotal part of my kids getting into wrestling. By their first Garden show, we went to go see The Fiend, and that was when he was sick. He was supposed to wrestle LA Knight. My kids absolutely loved it, and my son's reaction was the biggest one. Like, I love seeing things through a third person perspective, and my son is 6 years old, and he is where I was when I got really into wrestling. Him just yelling no, like. And he couldn't believe that this man had passed away. It really, and I was like, I can't even, I could just, give my condolences. I can't report on this as, a journalist, and I'm using hand quotes here, like, right? I don't consider myself a journalist at all. I'm just a guy that's told things. As a media person, as whatever, I couldn't do it in that manner. And my heart bleeds for that family. Terrible.
Yeah, it is. Who knows? I think everyone has said everything about it, and we're just sort of adding our thoughts as we end this show. But anytime somebody does pass away early, it's just always sad. You don't have to know the person. You don't have to be a fan of the person, but just the idea that somebody who was that young and the kids and such that don't have a father anymore, that is the saddest thing. We do have a super chat here that we're going to answer before we get out. We got a couple minutes left. The question is, what do you make of TK's reason for why he's again doing all in, all out, back to back in the same venues next year? As he said, for the foreseeable future, overexposing the same markets already seems to be an issue, but TK doesn't seem phased. So let me explain where Randy is going. He mentioned that was going to be the plan for 2024. They did the announcement at the end of All In that they were going to be back in Wembley in 2024. And man, if they could do 80% of that house again, back-to-back years, that'll be awesome. That'll be an amazing story. But the idea was, okay, are you going to do All In and All Out with a week apart again? And he said yes. Now, my caveat is I know he's about traditions, but if All Out does poor business, I do wonder if he figures out a way to adjust. Now, what he may say is, well, I wasn't able to do the All Out that I wanted, so we don't know. So maybe they're just going to run it back next year without even, learning from this upcoming weekend. But I think there's a little bit, the worry on my end is it's a little bit of taking advantage of your paying audience. And if he believes that the current audience is very happy with the product, the paying audience is very happy with the product, then he probably feels like they can do it. But if they're not, if they are turning anyone away by this, then yeah, it could be problematic. But I would trust that he and Chris Harrington and those guys, that they understand their audience and what they could push them. The pay-per-view that I'm actually more interested in is this Wrestle Dream show because of the night going up against Sunday Night Football, which is, I think, the Chiefs and the Jets. I saw my buddy Ryan Frederick had mentioned that. So that is the pay-per-view that I'm kind of wondering about, which is, the next one. What do we learn off of All In and All Out, and how does that translate into Wrestle Dream? So, but I mean, he's got the data, right? He's got the information. He's got the analytics that are telling him what he's going to do. If he doesn't see much drop off, if the business stays strong, I mean, he can do it again. Now, it's going to be up to the customers to tell him no, and that will be with not buying the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it really comes down to what matches, right? Would we be even questioning Tony's decision to run 2 pay-per-views week after week if the main event was CM Punk and Max, or the main event was, Omega and Danielson, right? I don't think we would be really having this conversation as much. I think it more heavily depends on what card you put out in advance, because you're not going to be able to. I think next year, if you do All In and then you do All Out and you don't have a solid card for All Out, I think you're going to have a little bit of an issue there. The other thing is the fun aspect of traveling on Labor Day weekend going away for people. That's another big part of this. I don't know many people traveling for that show compared to years prior, 2022 and 2021.
Starcast, come on.
I know there's Starcast happening. Listen, good. That's great. And I hope people travel and I hope they're going. Yeah. But the novelty of me traveling on a holiday weekend totally disappeared after that, going to Vegas and then going to, I don't want to travel on a holiday weekend. And I think a lot of people learn that too. It's hard. It's
more
hard.
Expensive.
Everything, yeah, it's double the prices for everything. So I think Tony, if this becomes a tradition, All In, All Out, I understand it. But he's also adding monthly pay-per-views this year, or close to monthly pay-per-views.
Yep.
I mean, listen, I know we're a little over in time, but I've heard the rumblings that Warner is, a lot of this is based on what they do with Max, and they're implementing some tests to see if they could do pay-per-views the way that they want to do it. And I'm expecting fourth quarter they're going to do some tests on this. I don't know if this is an AEW thing or not, but I know that WBD is testing functionality.
Well, Zaslav came out and said that they're going to start leaning into live sports. He publicly went and said
the live sports not the problem, though. It's the functionality of doing a pay-per-view. That's the issue. They could do live sports tomorrow. They've done live sports before. They've tested this out, and that works fine. You just adapt the same technology you're using in VR, or I mean, streaming has become so easy now. Everything is scalable. I think the pay-per-view functionality is what needs to be implemented because, listen, you work in technology, and so does our producer. Running code on an existing platform, just popping it in is not something that's very easy. You gotta make everything work harmoniously. So, I mean, that's part of it. But you're adding monthly pay-per-views. If you got a pay-per-view January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, you got this big one, and you got another one the week after in September, and then another one in October. I mean, I guess you could condition your audience to pay you $600 a year. I don't know.
They're gonna
I don't
start
know
picking and choosing.
People are exactly, and now you're going to have the scenario where, well, listen, money is tight for a lot of people. Do I want to spend the $50 on this one, or do I want to do it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks? You know, this is not a problem that WWE has anymore.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist, and they had it since 2013, and the world is very much changed, and media consumption has changed, and competition for TV for eyeballs has changed. AEW is not only just competing with WWE and the NFL and UFC on certain nights, they're also competing with TikTok and YouTube and Twitch. So you have to put all these into account. And listen, have a great team of analytical guys over there. Maybe a little better than WWE guys that really understand those numbers. You know, you got to have confidence in them if that's what they're there for, and they believe that they could do this. So we'll see with the pay-per-view numbers, because this is going to be the all-in number is going to be very high, whether or not it goes over 205 or not. But the pre-sale pay-per-view advance was astronomical on the BR side, on the pay-per-view side, and the Fight TV side for Europe and outside of US. So, I mean, could that number equate to 180,000? Yeah, I think so. Will it be at 200? I would think they'd come as close to 200, if not a little over, based on what we're seeing. But what are you going to do the following week? You know, is it a disappointment if you only do 100,000 pay-per-view buys or 99,000 pay-per-view buys?
I think going back to Randy's question, when it comes to pay-per-view, I think they're going to have a nice cushion thanks to All In. That maybe this all-out number, Tony's just throws it in the garbage and it's like, look, things didn't work out the way that I wanted. We'll show next year how to do this correctly, how we do this correctly. And he could always think of it that way. And so thanks again, Randy, for the chat, super chat, and the question. We went a little bit over time because we don't have Lance Storm breathing down our neck on a Thursday. But Andrew, glad to see we were able to do this week, and hopefully we can get a little bit back on schedule with Tuesdays. But if not, you know, we always have this opportunity to possibly do a show on a different day.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks have been nutty, but we'll mention now that we're in the fall, we should be back to Tuesdays.
Okay, all right.
Maybe one more week of delay, but I think we'll be okay.
For Andrew, I'm Double G. Enjoy your wrestling weekend, everybody. Peace out.